The lily pad and the letter. The lily pad wasn't just a cabin, it was a kaleidoscope of summer memories. Sun-warmed pine needles crunched underfoot, leading to the porch swing where Lily spent hours reading dog-eared fantasy novels, the lake shimmering blue beyond the railing. Inside, the air always smelled faintly of wood smoke and Grandma Rose's lavender sachets. Sunlight streamed through the paned windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and highlighting the chipped paint on the walls, imperfections Lily loved like freckles on a familiar face. Even the musty smell of the old fishing nets hanging in the corner of the living room was comforting. This place was more than just a building, it was an extension of her heart. Today, the lake sparkled extra bright, beckoning her to jump off the dock. But a different kind of thrill buzzed in the air, mail call. The postman, old Mr. Abernathy, usually just honked and tossed the envelopes into the box, but this time he actually got out of his jeep, his face etched with a strange solemnity. "Special delivery, Lilybug," he said, handing her a thick, official-looking envelope. "This one's from Mr. Grumbles himself. Handle with care, okay?" Mr. Grumbles. Just the name sent a shiver down Lily's spine. He was the president of the Lake Serenity Homeowners Association, a man notorious for his meticulously manicured lawn and his even more meticulously enforced rules. What could he possibly want with them? She tore open the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a single sheet of crisp, white paper emblazoned with the HOA logo. The words swam before her eyes, notice of revised lakeside regulations. She scanned the document, her brow furrowing with each line. New rules about dock sizes, boat motor restrictions, and landscaping? Her heart pounded as she reached the last paragraph, highlighted in bold. All lakeside properties are hereby required to maintain a uniform aesthetic adhering to the approved plant list available at the HOA office. Non-compliance will result in escalating fines, ultimately leading to the revocation of lake access privileges. Revocation of lake access privileges? She whispered, the words feeling like a punch to the gut. That meant no more lily pad. Bursting through the screen door, she ran inside, the letter clutched tightly in her hand. Her parents were in the kitchen, Mom humming as she stirred a pot on the stove, Dad sketching in his notebook at the table. "Mom! Dad! Look at this," she exclaimed, thrusting the letter into their hands. Her parents exchanged a worried glance as they read the letter. The humming stopped. Dad's sketching pen lay forgotten on the table. "This is serious," Mom said, her voice losing its usual lilt. "They're really cracking down. Uniform aesthetic?" Dad scoffed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "They want us to rip out Grandma Rose's rose bushes and replace them with, what? Hydrangeas all in a row?" Lily's mom walked over to the window and looked out at the lake. "It's more than just the landscaping, David. The dock size, the boat regulations, it all adds up. They're making it impossible for us to keep the lily pad." She turned back to face them, worry etched on her face. "We're already stretched thin with the mortgage. We can't afford these fines if we don't comply. And we certainly can't afford to fight them." Dad frowned. "There has to be something we can do. We can't just let them take our family legacy away. This cabin, it's everything." He picked up the letter again, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There has to be a loophole, some way to fight this." Lily watched her parents, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. The carefree summer atmosphere had vanished, replaced by a heavy cloud of uncertainty. The lily pad, her sanctuary, her happy place, was now under threat. She knew with a chilling certainty that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult battle. Grandma Rose's secret. The lake shimmered, reflecting the late afternoon sun in blinding flashes. Lily, perched on the edge of the dock, dangled her feet in the cool water. The tension from the almost eviction had eased, replaced by a prickly curiosity. "Mom," she called, watching her mother prune deadheads from a rose bush. "Who actually owns the land around here? I mean, does everyone own their own little plot, or—" Her mother snipped a thorny stem. "Well, technically, the HOA leases the land." "Leases? From who?" Her father, who had been wrestling with the stubborn pull cord of the ancient lawnmower, finally managed to coax it to life. The roar momentarily drowned out the conversation. He cut the engine and wiped sweat from his brow. "From your Grandma Rose, sweetheart." Lily's jaw dropped. "Grandma Rose? She owns all of this." She gestured around the lake, encompassing the neat rows of cabins, the meticulously manicured lawns, even Mr. Grumble's prized petunia patch. "Yep," her father said, popping the pea. "She inherited it from her parents. Back then, it was just a big, overgrown lot. She decided to lease it out to keep it from being developed into something less charming. And the HOA just Pays her rent? Her mother nodded. That's essentially it. They collect dues from everyone, and a portion of that goes to Grandma Rose for the land lease. The image of Mr. Grumbles, puffed up with self-importance as he wielded his power as HOA president, flashed through Lily's mind. The thought of him having to kowtow to her sweet, unassuming Grandma Rose was deliciously satisfying. Later that evening, the aroma of Grandma Rose's famous pot roast filled the cabin. Lily helped set the table, her mind still buzzing with the new information. The phone rang, shattering the peaceful atmosphere. Her mother answered. "Hello." "Oh, hi, Mr. Grumbles." Her voice tightened almost imperceptibly. Lily, pretending to arrange silverware, edged closer. "Yes, she's right here," her mother said, handing the phone to Grandma Rose with a strained smile. Grandma Rose took the phone, her brow furrowing slightly. "Hello, Harold." "Yes, this is Rose." Lily watched her grandmother's face. It started serene but gradually tightened as the conversation progressed. "Harold, I understand your concerns, but well, that's simply the way the lease agreement is structured," Grandma Rose said, her voice still gentle but with a steel edge Lily hadn't heard before. A pause. Then Grandma Rose's voice rose slightly. "Harold, I will not be bullied. I have been more than reasonable over the years. The terms are clear. If the HOA cannot meet its obligations..." She trailed off, her voice hardening. Lily strained to hear Mr. Grumble's side of the conversation but only caught muffled snippets. What she did hear, however, was Grandma Rose's sharp intake of breath. "Harold, that is quite enough." Grandma Rose snapped, her cheeks flushing. "I will not tolerate that kind of disrespect. I suggest you familiarize yourself with the renewal clause and perhaps a course in basic etiquette. Good evening." She slammed the phone down, her hand trembling slightly. The silence in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lily's parents exchanged worried glances. "Is everything all right, Mom?" Lily's mother asked tentatively. Grandma Rose forced a smile. "Perfectly fine, dear. Just a minor disagreement. Some people simply forget their manners." But Lily saw the flicker of anger in her grandmother's eyes, the set of her jaw. Something was definitely not perfectly fine. Mr. Grumbles, it seemed, had just made a very powerful enemy, and Lily had a feeling this was just the beginning. The pot roast suddenly didn't seem quite so appetizing. She wondered what Mr. Grumbles had said to upset her grandmother so much, and a cold knot of unease formed in her stomach. Whatever it was, she knew it wouldn't be good for anyone living around the lake, especially Mr. Grumbles. The power of the lease. The floral armchair sighed beneath Grandma Rose as she settled in. "This lake, this land. Generations cling to it. Your grandfather, bless his generous heart, was no financier. He inked a deal with the newly formed HOA, a lease, essentially handing them the reins to manage the common areas ringing the lake." Lily perched on the ottoman's frayed edge, anxiety churning her stomach. "So we're trapped." "Not quite, darling." A spark ignited in Grandma Rose's eyes. She reached for a delicate teacup. The clinking resonated in the still air. The lease stipulated a pittance of an annual fee from each cabin owner in exchange for their services. Mere pocket change back then. "Now it's highway robbery," Lily retorted, a bitter tang in her voice. Grandma Rose chuckled, a dry, papery sound. "Inflation, love. They've quietly, persistently inflated those fees. But they've overlooked something crucial. Or perhaps hoped I had." She paused for effect, savoring a sip. "The agreement also stated, unequivocally, that I, as the property owner, retain the right to adjust those assessments as I deem fit." Lily's jaw slackened. "You can alter the lease fees." "Indeed. The catch, naturally, is uniformity. I can't just stick it to Mr. Henderson, tempting as it is." A slow smile blossomed on Lily's face, a daring idea unfurling within her. "But you could fleece everyone?" Grandma Rose arched a brow, amusement dancing in her eyes. "Potentially. The question becomes, should I?" Lily leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Consider our situation, Gran. Mom's toiling herself ragged with double shifts and Dad's still hunting for something solid. The HOA's greed is bleeding us dry. What if we leveraged this power for our benefit? Triple their dues, rehabilitate the cabin, erase some debts, maybe even give Mom and Dad a leg up." The air hung thick with the scent of lavender tea as Grandma Rose pondered. She traced the teacup's edge, her gaze lost in the past. A dangerous gamble, Lilybug. They'll retaliate. Good, Lily responded, her voice unwavering. We've got nothing left to lose. She envisioned Mr. Henderson's self-satisfied smirk, the immaculate lawns of the modern cabins, the cutting remarks she'd overheard at the last HOA gathering. Determination surged through her like a jolt of electricity. Very well, Grandma Rose declared, her voice crisp and resolute. Let's unearth the document. I believe a copy resides somewhere in the attic's depths. She levered herself from the armchair, renewed vigor in her steps. Come, dear, let's hunt. As they ascended the groaning staircase to the shadowy attic, Lily began to strategize. Simply tripling the fees was not enough. They must anticipate the HOA's countermoves and have a contingency plan ready. This wasn't mere survival. It was a declaration of war. It was about harnessing the Lease's strength, the resolve of a family guarding its own. The musty aroma of aged paper and forgotten relics filled the air, a stark contrast to the burgeoning scent of defiance now blooming within Lily's heart. The attic, formerly a repository of discarded memories, now felt like a command center. Fees for grumbles. Grandma, you're practically giving away lakeside access, Lily said, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. Sunlight streamed through the cabin window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air above the worn, wooden table. Rose chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. They're family Lilybug, sort of, and they keep the place looking nice, mostly. Lily leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Family doesn't try to bulldoze your boathouse. Family doesn't nitpick about paint swatches and mailbox placement. These people, this HOA, they tried to steal your legacy, Grandma. Rose's smile faltered. She knew Lily was right. The HOA's relentless pressure had been a low, constant thrum of anxiety. But triple the fees? That seems excessive. Excessively fair, Lily countered smoothly. They want to play by the rules? Fine. The rules say they lease the land. And the market value for lakeside property has skyrocketed. We're talking prime real estate, Grandma. They should be paying accordingly. She reached across the table and took Rose's hand, her touch surprisingly firm. Plus, think of the possibilities. We could finally get that new dock you always wanted, maybe even fix the leaky roof. Rose looked at Lily, then out at the shimmering lake. The idea of a new dock, a solid, safe place to sit and watch the sunset was tempting. Only for the HOA members, Lily added, a mischievous glint in her eye. The other residents, the ones who aren't giving us grief, stay at the original rate. A slow smile spread across Rose's face. All right, Lilybug. You talked me into it. Triple the fees for the HOA. The new lease agreements went out the following Monday. Crisp, official-looking documents, they landed with a dull thud in mailboxes all along the lake. The friendly, familiar letterhead of Rose Cottage leases now seemed almost menacing. Mr. Grumbles, officially known as Harold Grumbacher, nearly choked on his morning coffee when he saw the bill. He squinted, convinced there had been a printing error. He read it again, slower this time, his face growing redder with each word. Triple the fees? Preposterous, he roared, startling his cat, Mittens, who leaped off his lap with a hiss. He grabbed his reading glasses and scanned the document for loopholes, for some logical explanation. There was none. Just cold, hard numbers and legal jargon. The original lease amount, neatly crossed out, replaced by a sum that would make even a seasoned real estate mogul gulp. He stomped out onto his porch, the lease agreement clutched in his trembling hand. Across the perfectly manicured lawn, Mrs. Abernathy was watering her petunias. Agnes, he bellowed, his voice cracking with indignation. Have you seen this? They've tripled the lease fees. Agnes Abernathy, a woman whose floral dresses always seemed to clash with her fiery personality, dropped her watering can with a clang. Tripled? You're joking. Mr. Grumbles marched over, thrusting the document in her face. Joke? Does this look like a joke to you, Agnes? This is highway robbery. We have to do something. His voice rose with each word, attracting the attention of other residents who started emerging from their houses, a confused, angry murmur spreading through the usually tranquil lakeside community. Mr. Grumbles, the perpetually disgruntled retiree, had finally found a cause that united them all in shared outrage. The battle lines were drawn. Parents on the fence. The aroma of Mama's blueberry muffins usually brought a smile to Papa's face, but this morning he just poked at one with his fork. 3 times the HOA fee, Lily says? He finally mumbled, the words thick with disbelief. Mama sighed, setting down her coffee cup with a clink. That's what she said. Said it was the only way to fight back against that Mr. Grumbles. But tripled Thomas. That's a lot. Their little cabin, nestled on the edge of Lake Serenity, had been their haven for 20 years. The HOA fees were manageable, a necessary evil for maintaining the communal areas and ensuring the lake stayed pristine. But triple? It threatened their carefully balanced budget, the one they'd meticulously crafted after retirement. We should have talked to her, Papa grumbled, finally taking a reluctant bite of the muffin. Before she went off making decisions like that. This affects all of us. She was upset, Thomas. You saw how that man was treating her, trying to bully her off her own property. What were we supposed to do? Tell her to just roll over. Mama countered, her voice rising slightly. The scent of blueberries suddenly seemed less comforting, more like a reminder of the peaceful life that was now threatened. No, of course not. But there has to be a better way than bankrupting half the lakefront. Papa pushed his plate away, the muffin half-eaten. He got up and went to the window, peering out at the still, glassy surface of Lake Serenity. The sun glinted off the water, blindingly bright. What if this doesn't work, Martha? What if Grumbles just laughs it off and finds another way to make our lives miserable? Mama joined him at the window, wrapping her arm around his waist. Then we'll figure something else out. We always do. But we can't just stand by and let him win. Not this time. Later that afternoon, while Lily was off dealing with the fallout of her decision, Mama and Papa took a walk along the lakefront. The air was thick with the smell of pine needles and damp earth. They passed Mrs. Peterson, who was struggling to haul a bag of groceries up the steep path to her cabin. Mr. Grumbles stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her struggle. Need a hand, Beatrice? Papa offered, stepping forward. Mr. Grumbles scoffed. She should have thought about that before buying so much stuff. Maybe she should sell that eyesore of a cabin and move back to the city where she belongs. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, laced with thinly veiled contempt. Mrs. Peterson's face crumpled and she mumbled something about arthritis. Papa helped her with the groceries, his jaw tight. Mama glared at Mr. Grumbles, her eyes flashing. As they continued their walk, they saw Mr. Henderson, the elderly gentleman who lived alone, trying to repair his rickety dock. Mr. Grumbles was there too, pointing and shouting about the unsightly mess and threatening to report him to the HOA if he didn't fix it properly. That's enough, Mama said, stopping abruptly. That man is making everyone miserable. Papa nodded, his face grim. Lily was right. Something has to be done. That evening, when Lily returned, exhausted and worried, she found her parents waiting for her on the porch. The porch swing creaked rhythmically in the twilight. We've been talking, Papa began, his voice surprisingly firm. And we've decided we're with you, Lily. Whatever it takes. We'll manage the fees. We'll fight this together. Mama squeezed Lily's hand. Don't worry, sweetie. We'll figure it out. We always do. Lily's heart swelled with relief. The fear that had been gnawing at her all day began to recede, replaced by a surge of determination. She wasn't alone in this. And with her parents by her side, she knew they could face whatever Mr. Grumbles threw their way. The battle for Lake Serenity was far from over, but for the first time in days, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. The scent of Mama's lavender wafted from the garden, a comforting promise of home and family. Save the lily pad picnic. A lily pad picnic, Lily declared, tracing circles on the condensation of her iced tea. That's what we need. Her mother, perched on a stool at the kitchen island, looked up from her crossword puzzle. What now, dear? A picnic. On the lily pads. Or, well, near the lily pads. We'll set up blankets and baskets on the little peninsula. Showcase the lake, the wildlife, the everything. It'll be a Save Our Lake picnic to drum up support. Lily's voice bubbled with enthusiasm. Her father, who was meticulously cleaning his fishing lures at the counter, chuckled. Honey, that sounds like a whole lot of work for a Sunday afternoon. But it's important, Dad. We need to remind everyone what they're fighting for, what they stand to lose if the HOA gets their way and turns this place into some sterile, manicured wasteland. Her mother, bless her, was already on board. I think it's a wonderful idea, Lily. We can bake some of my famous blueberry muffins and I'll make the potato salad everyone loves. Lily grinned. Perfect. I'll handle the invitations. We need to get the word out to all the non-HOA cabin owners. Let's make this a real show of solidarity. The next day was a flurry of activity. Lily designed and printed invitations featuring a watercolor painting of the lake bathed in golden sunlight. She personally delivered them to each of the targeted cabins, making sure to emphasize the importance of their presence. We need to show them we're united, she told old Mr. Henderson, whose cabin was practically swallowed by wisteria, that we won't let them bully us into submission. The day of the picnic dawned bright and clear. Lily and her parents were up early, hauling blankets, baskets overflowing with food, and folding chairs down to the peninsula. The air hummed with the buzz of dragonflies and the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. As noon approached, guests began to arrive. Children shrieked with laughter as they chased each other across the grass, while the adults mingled, swapping stories and sharing concerns about the HOA's increasingly aggressive tactics. The smell of barbecue, freshly baked bread, and blooming wildflowers filled the air. Lily watched, a sense of warmth spreading through her chest. Mrs. Abernathy, the retired librarian, was animatedly discussing the merits of native plant species with young Timmy, who usually spent his days glued to a video game. Mr. Johnson, the gruff mechanic, was teaching a group of kids how to skip stones across the water. Even cranky old Mrs. Peterson was smiling, her wrinkled face softened by the sunshine. The lake, shimmering like 1,000 scattered diamonds, seemed to reflect the joyful atmosphere. Lily knew, looking around at the assembled crowd, that this wasn't just a picnic. It was a declaration, a testament to the enduring spirit of community and a reminder that they wouldn't surrender their piece of paradise without a fight. Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the water, Lily helped her parents pack up the remnants of the feast. A sense of exhaustion mingled with satisfaction washed over her. "Well, that was a success, wouldn't you say?" her father remarked, hoisting a cooler into the back of the pickup truck. Lily nodded, gazing out at the lake, now painted in hues of orange and purple. "More than a success, Dad. It was a reaffirmation. A reminder of what we're fighting for." But as they drove back to the cabin, a nagging worry crept into Lily's mind. She knew the HOA wouldn't be pleased with their little gathering. In fact, she suspected they'd be furious. And that meant they were likely planning their next move. The lily pad picnic may have been a victory, but the war was far from over. Grumble's downfall. Lily felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see old Mr. Abernathy, the bait shop owner, his face creased with concern. "Heard what that Grumbles fellow is trying to pull. Count me in, little lady. Anything you need." Abernathy wasn't in the HOA. Neither was half the town, actually. The lake cabins were a mix of the original homesteaders and newer vacation homes. The homesteaders largely ignored the HOA, grumbling about it amongst themselves but otherwise staying out of it. Lily hadn't realized how many of them quietly resented Grumbles until now. Soon, a small crowd had gathered, a motley crew of fishing guides, retirees who swore they'd never pay HOA dues, and even a couple of teenagers who used the lake as their personal skate park. They offered everything from legal advice questionable at best to baked goods delicious and very welcome. Grandma Rose, perched on the porch swing, surveyed the scene with a knowing smile. "See, Lilybug? Folks around here got a strong sense of right and wrong." The next HOA meeting was tense enough to cut with a butter knife. The air in the community hall, usually thick with the smell of potluck casseroles, now reeked of simmering resentment. Mr. Grumbles, oblivious or perhaps willfully ignorant, launched into his usual diatribe about unkempt lawns and improperly stored kayaks. Margaret Olson, the retired schoolteacher with a voice that could silence a room of unruly children, cleared her throat. "Mr. Grumbles," she said, her voice sharp and clear, "I believe we have a more pressing matter to discuss." A murmur rippled through the room. Even Harold, the perpetually nervous treasurer, shifted in his seat. "And what might that be, Margaret?" Grumbles sneered, adjusting his tie. "Your leadership," Margaret stated plainly. "It's become divisive." Grumbles sputtered. "Divisive? I'm simply upholding the regulations. You're selectively enforcing them." Another voice chimed in. It was Mrs. Peterson, whose prize-winning roses Grumbles had once threatened to fine because they supposedly encroached on common ground. "And you're targeting individuals for personal reasons." One by one, members voiced their grievances, their complaints echoing Lily's own experiences. The illegal fines, the petty power plays, the sheer, unadulterated meanness. The room hummed with a collective frustration that had been simmering for far too long. Harold, emboldened by the collective anger, nervously adjusted his glasses and spoke. There's a provision in the bylaws. Article 7, Section 3. A vote of no confidence." Grumbles' face paled. He tried to regain control, pounding his fist on the table. "This is mutiny. I won't allow it." But the tide had turned. The motion was made, seconded, and the vote was called. Lily watched, her heart pounding, as each member cast their ballot. The silence was deafening as Harold tallied the votes, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the pen. Finally he looked up, his voice barely a whisper. The vote is in favor of removing Mr. Grumbles as president. A collective gasp filled the room, followed by a ripple of applause. Even a few of the non-HOA members who had packed the back of the hall in a show of solidarity clapped softly. Grumbles stared, dumbfounded, his face a mask of disbelief. His reign of petty tyranny was over. He gathered his belongings, his face contorted with rage. He shot Lily a venomous look as he stormed out, muttering something about lawyers and lawsuits. Lily didn't flinch. He had lost. A kinder president. The collective sigh that swept through the community hall felt like a physical force, almost knocking Lily off her feet. Agnes Periwinkle's jaw hung open like a dropped hatch, and the tremor in her hands was now visible even from the back row. Mrs. Sunshine, radiating a genuine warmth that seemed to melt the frost clinging to the room, beamed. "Thank you, everyone," she said, her voice clear and strong despite its inherent gentleness. "I promise I won't let you down." The applause was hesitant at first, then grew in volume, fueled by a mixture of hope and relief. Lily clapped, her own anxieties easing slightly. This felt like a turning point, a breath of fresh air after weeks of suffocating tension. Even Dad seemed to relax his shoulders a fraction. As the meeting slowly dispersed, Mrs. Sunshine made a beeline for Lily and her family. Agnes, still looking shell-shocked, scurried away like a startled field mouse. "Lily, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson," Mrs. Sunshine said, extending a hand to each of them. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "I want to apologize. I truly do. For everything that's happened. It wasn't right, the way you were targeted." Lily's mom, ever gracious, squeezed Mrs. Sunshine's hand. "Thank you, Martha. We appreciate that." Mrs. Sunshine's gaze held Lily's, sincere and unwavering. "And Lily, I was so impressed by your presentation. You spoke with such passion and intelligence. This community needs that kind of energy." A blush crept up Lily's neck. "Thank you, Mrs. Sunshine. Please call me Martha," she insisted, then her expression turned serious. "The cabin size rule, it needs to be reviewed. It's outdated, unfair, and frankly ridiculous in its application. I intend to make that a priority." Dad cleared his throat. "We appreciate that, Martha. But the damage has been done. We've already taken steps." Mrs. Sunshine frowned, a ripple of concern etching itself on her face. "What kind of steps?" Before Dad could elaborate, Lily jumped in. "We, adjusted the lease fees." Martha's eyebrows shot up. "Adjusted? How so?" Lily swallowed, suddenly feeling guilty. "We tripled them." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Martha's eyes widened, then narrowed slightly. "Tripled them? Lily, that's drastic. They were going to force us to tear down our cabin." "Martha," Lily defended, her voice rising slightly. "We had to do something." Martha sighed, rubbing her temples. "I understand the impulse, I truly do. But tripling the fees might not have been the most diplomatic approach." "Diplomacy got us nowhere," Dad muttered under his breath. Martha ignored him. "I need you to work with me on this, Lily. Grandma Rose is a valuable member of this community, even if she can be a bit stubborn. I know you two have had your differences, but I believe you can find common ground." Lily's stomach clenched. Working with Grandma Rose? The thought was about as appealing as eating dirt. But she knew Martha was right. Tripling the fees had been a knee-jerk reaction born of anger and desperation. It wasn't a sustainable solution. "Okay," Lily agreed, albeit reluctantly. "I'll try." Martha smiled, the warmth returning to her face. "That's all I ask. Now come on. Let's get some coffee and talk about how we can fix this mess." As they walked towards the makeshift coffee station, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Mrs. Sunshine might be kinder, more reasonable than Agnes, but she was still an HOA president. And HOAs, by their very nature, were bureaucratic beasts. Lily just hoped this particular beast could be tamed. The scent of stale coffee filled Lily's nostrils. She grabbed a chipped mug and poured herself a cup, trying to ignore the ground swirling at the bottom. This was going to be a long, complicated process. But for the first time in weeks, Lily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could actually win this thing. The lily pad's future. The aroma of Grandma Rose's blueberry pie still hung in the air as she addressed the assembled leaseholders. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the community hall, illuminating dust motes dancing above their heads. Her voice, though amplified by the microphone, retained its familiar, comforting timbre. "All right, everyone, settle down," she said, patting the microphone. "I've had a good long think, and after hearing from so many of you, well, I've decided to revert the lease fees back to their original amount." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Lily, perched on a folding chair beside Maya, felt the tension leach from her shoulders. But Grandma Rose wasn't finished. Now, about that cabin size regulation, she paused, her eyes twinkling. Seems a bit silly, doesn't it? Who am I to tell you how much space you need to enjoy the lake? Build what you want, within reason, of course. No skyscrapers now. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Lily squeezed Maya's hand. It was over. They'd won. The rest of the meeting was a blur of back-patting, handshakes, and murmured thank yous directed at Grandma Rose and, to Lily's surprise, at her. People kept stopping by to say they admired her courage, her quick thinking. Even Mr. Henderson, the man who championed the cabin size rule, shuffled over, his face slightly red. Just wanted to say, young lady, you got a head on your shoulders, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Didn't agree with your methods, but, well, you got results. He retreated before Lily could formulate a reply. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the lake in shades of orange and purple, Lily sat on the porch of her cabin, the familiar scent of pine needles and lake water filling her lungs. Maya sat beside her, strumming a lazy tune on her ukulele. You're a hero, you know, Maya said, nudging Lily with her elbow. Lily shrugged, but a smile played on her lips. I just didn't want to lose this place. The lake was calm, reflecting the fiery sky. Fireflies blinked in the gathering dusk, their tiny lights like scattered stars. The sound of crickets chirping filled the air. It was perfect. The following summer arrived in a burst of sunshine and warmth. The lily pad buzzed with activity. New cabins were springing up, each unique in its design. Some were small and cozy, others larger and more elaborate, but all seemed to blend seamlessly into the landscape. Lily spent her days swimming, fishing, and exploring the lake with Maya. They discovered hidden coves, secret waterfalls, and a colony of beavers building a dam on the far side of the lake. She even started teaching a group of kids how to paddle board, earning herself the unofficial title of Lake Lily. One afternoon, while paddling near the old boathouse, she saw a figure sitting on the dock. It was Grandma Rose, her fishing rod propped against her knee, a contented smile on her face. How's the fishing, Grandma Rose? Lily called out, paddling closer. Not much biting today, Grandma Rose replied, but that's all right. Sometimes it's just nice to be out here, watching the water. She patted the dock beside her. Come on up, Lily. Sit a spell. Lily beached her paddleboard and hopped onto the dock. She sat beside Grandma Rose, the wood warm beneath her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun glint off the water. You know, Lily, Grandma Rose said finally, I've been thinking. This place, it's more than just cabins and a lake. It's a community. And you, my dear, you helped save it. Lily blushed. I just did what I thought was right. Grandma Rose chuckled. Sometimes that's all it takes. She reached over and squeezed Lily's hand. You're a good girl, Lily. A good girl. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lake, Lily knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The lily pad was more than just a place to spend her summers. It was home. And she was a part of it, now and forever. The lake called to her, and she answered. The lake and the legacy she helped protect.